Steven, I've got the weight of the world of supporting You Can't Disappoint a Podcast on my shoulders, and I thought maybe, just maybe, to lighten the load on my back, we could give our fellow listeners and enjoyers of You Can't Disappoint a Podcast some ways to help us out. What do you think?
Well, I'm not normally in the habit of lightening the load on your back, but, if people want to help us, they sure can. How can they do that, Zach?
The first way is to support us on Patreon. If you like what we do here and want to help us take it further and get all kinds of extra content, give us money at patreon.com/can'tdisappointpodcast.
If you don't want to bear the brunt of our debt, you can appreciate the fruit that we bear to you by going and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Yelp, Google Chrome podcast reviewer, or whatever you can. And that's going to help us get seen. And the more people see us, the more that we want to be seen, and the more that we see you.
You can also hang out with us on social media every week over on Facebook, Instagram at Can't Disappoint Podcast, and Twitter at You Can't Disapod. Also, go ahead and give a subscribe and thumbs up to our YouTube channel, where we also post the podcast every week.
If you want to hold our hands as we walk down this community memory lane, you should shoot us an email over at can'tdisappointpodcast@gmail.com. You can send us your MVP, your favorite funniest moment, and trivia for the episode we're about to record, and we'll read it live on the air.
Yeah, we don't do the show live, but nice try, buddy. Thanks for supporting us, and let's get into this week's podcast.
Thank you for saving us, Shirley. I mean, your name's not Shirley. This is a story about strangers. Anywho, can you take us to heaven now, please?
Ooh, I cannot. I just came to say goodbye on my way to Abraham's bosom. Bye. I forgive you.
Hey, marriage!
Ooh, hello, Steven.
Ooh, hello, kitty.
I don't know. I'm trying to get myself in the spooky spirit, but it's the middle of July.
Yeah.
Are you? And you don't really get in the spooky spirit that much to begin with, do you?
Not a whole lot. I like Halloween more than some other holidays. I like it a lot more as an adult than I did when I was
Halloween's fun.
Yeah.
I'm super excited to experience Halloween Horror Nights at Universal because it's like, as you're walking around the park, there's like scares within just walking around the park, and then they have a bunch of like really themed horror mazes like based off of different properties. Like I know there's going to be a Beetlejuice one and a Haunting of Hill House one, and they haven't announced the others yet, but that sounds really fun. Anyway,
are you a big haunted house person?
I enjoy them. I enjoy a well-done haunted house. I've been in plenty of haunted houses where I think what I'm doing is lame.
Did you ever do the one at the mall?
No. I didn't get into it till I was embarrassingly older.
Ah, that's okay.
Was it good?
I was probably in high school. Better than it could have been, but grand scheme of things, really, no. It was good for being a haunted house in the Anderson Mall, I
That's
suppose.
kind of how the one... Have you been to the one that's in the old movie theater?
No.
In Anderson?
I haven't.
Like the old Applewood movie theater. It's kind of like that, too, where it's better than it could have been, but it's still kind of bad. But it's really cool the way that they've, like, gutted an old movie theater and turned it in. Like, you go up the steps and stuff to go around the... Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Welcome to You Can't Disappoint a Podcast, everyone. Another week. We're talking about spooky stuff this week, so I've been kind of excited for that. Welcome aboard. I'm Zach, and I'm off to Pilates.
Hi, I'm Steven, and...
That's not even how it goes, but whatever.
I know, I couldn't remember what the real one was, so I just hummed Songbird by Kenny G.
It's called Daybreak by Michael Haggins, I think, and
Nice.
Me and a friend in high school used to like harmonize together to it frequently.
That's great.
Let's talk about stuff. We got to shout out, as always, our $10 and up patrons over at patreon.com/can'tdisappointpodcast. If you want to learn more about what that is, go to that link I just said. Those people are Danny M. Lugo, Mary Baker Budisa, and Melissa LaPena. We love you. Big, sloppy, wet, old kisses to each one of you, respectfully, consensually.
Respectfully. Mm-hmm.
And also a shout out, as always, to our community papa at Communities on Twitter. Without him squeezing us from his loins, we would not be here before you to analyze Community on a weekly basis.
He tweeted at us today, and I was very confused as to what it meant.
That he was going to disappoint us?
Well, he said, "I'll going to disappoint today."
Yeah, I don't think all of that was intentional. I think Dad's been a little
hitting the sauce again.
Heavy on the Ambien lately. But I think it's because he didn't email us, and he was because of the Ambien, clearly.
Yeah.
And so he was saying something about it. Whatever. Thanks, Dad, for supporting us. We're glad to have you. How are you, Steven? How's your week been?
It's been good. Busy, but good. What did I do? I got to eat at one of my favorite pizza places on Sunday.
What pizza place?
Lou Malnati's.
Oh, yeah. Lou Malnati's is great. I don't know that I've ever had... I don't know how to even say Giordano's.
Giordano's?
I haven't had it, but every time I go to Chicago, I seek out Lou Malnati's because I like it.
I've got a new place for you to try that Danny took me to for my birthday.
Yeah.
It was called Pequod's. And it's really good. They bring your deep dish pizza out to you in a cast iron skillet that they made it in.
I'm pretty sure they do that at Lou Malnati's. Or maybe it's not a skillet because it's easier to cut. But I feel like it's on some type of stone.
It's maybe. I don't know. It wasn't when I went this last time.
So going to Lou Malnati's, I haven't been to Chicago in a couple years, but when I was a little bit younger and driving off on my own, it was really exciting to go to Chicago and be in the big city and going with a friend by ourselves. And I remember a time me and my roommate at the time went to Chicago to see a Green Day concert. And we were super broke. We didn't bring any money but gas money and food money. And we got to Chicago, and our plan was to wait overnight at downtown Chicago in line for this concert. So the only money we really had was to get fancy pizza from Giordano's or from Lou Malnati's. So we spent a lot of money there. And as we're sitting there, we are looking at the venue and stuff like that, and we see there's a strict no lining up before 7 a.m. rule. And me and my buddy just kind of look at each other we don't have any money to go stay anywhere. So we looked at this app on my phone that I used to use, and you can find parking spaces, and we found this sketchy ass parking lot that was behind a building or something that was just a space that people allow people to park in for money, that was packed with cars that looked like junkers and stuff, And we put blankets covering the windows of my car, paid $15 to park, and we didn't sleep really, but we slept there in my car, and then we're sleep deprived the whole next day waiting in line for the concert.
That's fantastic.
Oh, man. I wish I would have known about one time you and I went to Chicago and we stayed in a hostel that was insanely cheap.
That was so cheap, and it was really nice. We got our room upgraded.
It was nice for what it was. Yeah. If I had known about something like that, we could have slept in a bed.
I've recommended that to other people coming to Chicago to stay.
Yeah.
And I know that somebody did.
Cool.
And they liked it.
Cool. Well, let's talk about Community.
Let's do it.
Why did I start talking? Because Lou Malnati's pizza is really good. It takes forever to get your pizza, but it's so garlicky and the crust is so good. And, we're here to talk about Season 3, Episode 5, Horror Fiction in 7 Spooky Steps, which was directed by Tristram Shapiro, who is a giant of directing episodes of Community. Over the series through seasons 1 through Season 5, he directed 24 episodes. And I think that's more episodes than either of the Russos directed.
That is, 'cause I think you said that the highest was
slightly
22.
lower 20s. And it was written by, I believe this is the only episode he had any involvement in on Community. It was written by a man named Dan Harmon.
Oh.
I don't know if
is
you're
he
familiar
the guy who made that weird Back to the Future thing where the old guy wanted to the kid?
Yes.
Ah.
He previously wrote the pilot in Spanish 101, Abed's Uncontrollable Christmas, and after this episode, he writes Origins of Vampire Mythology, Repilot, Ladders, and the series finale, Emotional Consequences of Broadcast Television, and it originally aired on October 27th, 2011.
Spooky!
Before we talk about what we thought about this week's episode, let's get into some trivia. I have 4 questions for you this week.
I have 5.
Okay, so give me 2.
What time and where is the Halloween party taking place?
Is it in the cafeteria? Or not the cafeteria? It is?
Uh-huh.
And is it at 8?
9:30.
9:30. That's kind of late for a school party.
Isn't it?
It is.
Maybe it makes it less noticeable if the lights are flickering if it's nighttime.
Sure, that's fair.
In the title sequence, how many aliens are on
Oh my
Kim
God.
Jong's little card, flap, whatever you want to
Thoughtful
call it?
question. Are there 3?
There are 3.
Nice.
Yeah, I you know what my favorite part of this episode is?
The theme song?
I think that opening title card is great. They get a 10 out of 10 for that. They knocked it out. All the drawings were great. Love it.
Yeah, they are
every
great,
time.
but honestly, I think they're done better in the season 4 Halloween episode because they mess more with the music behind it and it's a little spooky.
It's true. Okay, 8.5.
I'll give you
out
a
of
question.
10.
What, as many as you can name, what are Britta's party snacks?
Fruit Loops.
Uh-huh. Is that all
I
you
just
got?
remembered the joke when Shirley was like, I'm gonna.
Are you
ask
sure
this-
I-
Are you sure
I
I
can't
can't
bring
bring anything? That joke just got funnier now that I'm thinking.
Was
about
that your way of dodging my question?
Yeah, I got Fruit Loops.
There were taco shells.
Taco.
There were Lucky Charms, it appeared. There was a chocolate bar that was open. There were some miniature chocolate donuts and some type of red dip because Britta was like, remember, you can dip.
Oh boy, nice, good question. In Shirley's story, what does Troy have on his shirt?
Oh, man. I can see it, but I don't know it.
The Union Jack.
Oh, yeah, okay. I remember that.
Yeah.
All right. What-
As like
Oh.
ridiculous as they all looked there, some
Yeah.
of the outfits were not terrible in that one.
It's just ridiculous because of the characters.
Yeah.
You're right. Some of them were awful. Mm-hmm. What about Britta is Abed comforted by in his version of the story?
Her symmetrical face and was it flowy hair, blonde hair,
Shiny hair.
shiny hair.
But very close. I'll pretty much give that one to you.
Okay. What does Troy demand in Pierce's story when he's doing like the hold up, stick up?
Oh,
It's a hold up if you're a cowboy. It's a stick up if you're black.
I don't know.
He demands all his expensive brandy and hubcaps.
Expensive brandy. I remember that kind of. Okay. Another one for you. What does Pierce name himself in his own story?
Oh, was it like Maverick or Murdoch?
You're so close.
Was it
You don't
I
got
know.
it. It's Magnum.
Magnum? Oh no! I dropped my monster condoms for my Magnum dong.
Thanks. You got one
Anyone
more?
who's watching, I'm so
Who
sorry.
doesn't know that? Well, you don't. No worries, because nobody's watching.
My last one. Abed was the most sane. Who, according to Britta's test, was the least?
Oh, was it obvious by how many like red marks on it there were, or something?
I thought so.
Is it Jeff?
It was not.
Shirley?
It was not.
Who?
Pierce.
Sure. I thought maybe they would throw a curveball with it.
No, I think they should have.
Let's move on to emails. Oh, wait, no, I have one more question. According to Troy, ruining a Brita party is like what?
Oh, I know this one because this is a great line.
Yeah.
Ruining a Brita party is like letting poop.
You're almost there, buddy.
Oh, letting poop spoil?
Yeah, that's it exactly. Good job.
Ooh, that one, I had to pull that one out from like deep within.
Let's move over to the emails this week. I'm not mad, but I'm a little disappointed because we've only got one write-in. So let me shout out right off at the top of the show. If you want to be a part of the segment next week, is the halfway point of the television program Community. We're talking about the episode Advanced Gay. So write us in your emails, your episode MVP, and your favorite funny moment to can'tdisappointpodcast@gmail.com. But Steven, what do we have for today?
Okay, I've got a two-parter because the second one, if I can base on what the email contains on the subject, it says, I forgot my MVP. So I'm going to read the one first entitled Tribby. I'm not typing out my trivia because you guys make fun of how I type. I'm dumb, so that's offensive. Instead, I took a video and uploaded to YouTube to make it easier. Please play this and answer my questions. I do hope to hear a good response. Thank you. Sent from Dalmatian Calendar.
All right, so one moment.
Can you share the screen and play this?
I'm really nervous.
I am too. I feel like they're going to be sitting in like a leather chair holding a naked cat or something, petting it, like Dr. Evil.
You sure didn't say who the email was from.
Oh!
I'm sure it's obvious.
This is from Lil over at peepreviews@gmail.com. Send them all your peep reviews. Oh, no. Unironically great song.
Yeah, thanks for the tribby, Lil.
Thanks, Lil. My MVP is
And to
Abed.
answer that question, I really think that Harmon's intention was to poke some loving fun at the Israeli-Pakistani conflict.
Yeah,
Palestine.
I think that his stance on it is pretty clear.
And pretty out of date.
Yeah, I think that there were some jokes in there about a certain global event that didn't need to be in there.
All right, let's move on.
Then they go on to say, my MVP is Abed. I love that fella.
Sure.
I also went down a rabbit hole of Danny Pudi. He won the first Chris Farley scholarship. So a little bit of trivia. Thanks, Lil.
What do you have to do to get the Chris Farley scholarship? Prove how much drugs you've done? How many cocaines that you've inhaled? Is it too soon?
So there's like a final test for that one where you have to simultaneously rip a sports coat while doing a line of meth and jumping through a table.
All right, thanks for the email, Lil. Please write us in for Advanced Gay next week. That's going to be a lot of fun. Steven, let's move into the next thing. One of my favorite moments every week, and it's going to be a very spooky moment this week, I'm sure. We're going to find out together if Steven did or did not, in fact... Did Steven watch the episode?
Steven watch the episode this week?
As always, you've got 20 seconds to try to nail home everything you can about this week's episode of Community, and based on how well you did, I'll give you a letter grade that I believe you've earned.
Now, I'm coming off of my worst performance in a long time.
Remedial Chaos Theory. Yeah, If all you knew about Remedial Chaos Theory was what Steven said in the 20 seconds, it would be that people showed up to the party in a certain order and they play Yahtzee and they get pizza.
Is that not what happens?
Those things do happen. But this week, I feel like maybe there's some writing on the wall that you can do a little bit better.
I hope so, but in all reality, Zach, I don't know that I will.
You haven't yet. Yeah, okay, well, let's do it. We've got 20 seconds on the clock. 3, 2, 1, go.
It's Halloween! And they're having a party, but Britta's having a pre-party for the party because she's weird, and then there's bad snacks, and then they have to figure out who's the killer because Britta gave them a test. She's a psychic agent, she's crazy. And who's it going to be? Everyone tells scary stories. They all seem kind of crazy. Lots of stuff happens. Abed kind of deconstructs it all. Pierce is racist. And then really, Jeff filled in the ranches randomly. They figure out who did it because Britta did it. Damn it.
Yeah, I wish you would have given just a couple more details about the stories. Mm-hmm. And would have gotten to the ending. But it wasn't anywhere near as bad as some of the other ones you've done. But that wasn't anything special. I think it was a B-.
Okay, I'll take it. Thank you.
Now let's talk a little bit. Let's get into the episode. And before we say what we thought of it this week, what were some of your definitive favorite funny moment of the episode?
I think Abed humming the music is my funniest moment of the whole episode.
And Troy bop into it and knowing where Abed's going with it,
which was great. I also think that the Shirley line early on was pretty funny too, especially
Are you sure I can't help
snacks.
That one?
Yeah, with all the other snacks now that you pointed out that Britta had there, that's really hilarious.
Some of my favorite funny moments were just Abed's demeanor in his version of the story towards Britta, where he's like, your lips were soft and the right amount of moisture. And Britta's like, would you like to do it again? And he says, no, but not in like a no, just like a really like,
No.
yeah, it was so Abed, and it was really fun to see that played out. I actually had two other that I wrote down too, though. Shirley's demeanor in her own story when she's
my
an
God.
angel. I forgive you. I love that so much.
Shirley
And
was great in this episode.
my last thing is Pierce punching Troy with his dick in his own story. And just the zip, the way Pierce plays off the thwap, and Troy's, oh my God. And then bam. I love that moment a lot.
That's pretty fantastic.
But let's talk about what we thought of this episode. Before we recorded this week, the way we've talked about it was that it's an episode that I have really enjoyed in the past, and one that you have had a little bit tougher of a time, like, heaping praise on it.
Yeah.
And we've just watched it for the first time in a little while. What were your thoughts on horror fiction in 7 Spooky Steps?
If I can be totally honest, every time I watched it, I liked it a little less.
And outside of just this time, try to give me a little bit of, in general, what your
Sure.
issue is with it. What do you think it does wrong?
I just think that there's some funny stuff that happens, but I take issue with the fact that the real world story is it's really a reach for me that Jeff would be playing along with that at all. I also think that it's a little bit of silly of a premise, which is fine. You can do silly, and they do silly well. But this one, for me, just doesn't really work in the real world. I think the stories, some of them are really well done, and it's all really well acted. But I think every time I watch this episode, I'm about done with it by the time it gets to Pierce's story.
Wow. Well,
And then I just completely stop caring about what's happening, which sucks because everyone's doing such a good job. The Dean's hilarious in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Troy's hilarious. Abed's great. And everyone does a really good job. I just think that it just does not hit for me.
one positive I did think of this episode, and a positive of all of season 3, which has been kind of a mixed bag so far, they really know how to use every character within an episode now.
Yeah.
They've done that really, really well, and that's really good in this episode. And I've always really enjoyed this episode. I don't remember if when we ranked Halloween episodes, if it was number 2 or number 3 for me.
I think it was number 3. I think you put this one just ahead of season 1.
Well, no. I think it would have been... There's only 4. So I think it would have been season 4, maybe this one, season 1, season 2. Or season 1 and this one might be switched. I don't remember.
That's what I said, that you put it number 2 ahead
You
of
said
season
number
1.
3. You said number 3. And you
Oh,
said
I did?
And I think you said above season 1.
Yeah, if it was number 2.
I don't know.
Said 2.
Whatever.
My
I've
bad.
always liked
Not
this
my
episode
bad.
quite a bit.
I don't know my numbers, Zach. I don't know why you have to rub it in live
Sorry.
on the air
Sorry,
in front of all
we're
our
not
viewers.
live. God damn it.
People are tuning in right now. Sorry, friends at home.
I have always really liked this episode, and I think this time I watched it, I fall a little bit closer to the way that you feel about the episode. I think it's really, really funny, and I really like the fake stories, and I like that it's a fake situation that the characters are coming up with, and then we see it actually acted out on screen. I think that's really funny. But the more times I watch it, the less and less I can go with the Britta storyline or the framing device for the whole
Yeah.
episode. It feels like a really, really loose way for them to just do what they wanted to do, which is tell all these spooky stories, like riffs on the same story.
I think I also figured out something else that bugs me about this episode.
Let's hear it.
And it's because of the difference with the other Halloween episodes. And I'll just look at season 1 and 2. Season 4 even falls into this category too. But there's actual danger. Like, there's a possibility of something not great happening in season 2 especially, and season 1. This season, I don't think there's any real fear that one of them is going to be a killer or a murderer.
It's very loose.
But season 2, there's actually, people that are in a zombified state. Season 1, Pierce is actually on drugs, freaking out. You know,
You're
so
right.
there's actual things happening that cause
And
the tension.
even in season 4, I forget
yeah,
what
they're
the
trapped
conflict
in.
is, but yeah,
they're
he's
in Pierce's
trapped in
house,
his,
and like
he's trapped in his emergency room or something,
Yeah.
or his bunker
safe
or
room.
whatever.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to getting back to that one. I think it's kind of a highlight of season 4.
I liked it. I think that was my number 3 for sure.
This episode, I like a lot of what it does, but it feels more than ever Community doing a homage episode in the laziest way they've ever done it. They do it and they pull it off, but it doesn't feel like there's any like, oh, Community had to do this. Like Community had something to say about this kind of thing.
I think that they could have had a just as effective episode and still done the homage to like horror movies and things like that if maybe they'd actually taken a trip together to a cabin for a weekend, and there they can tell scary stories for whatever reason, and then the tension
Something
that builds would be
happens.
that they think somebody's gonna like come get him or something, you know, something like that. That would work.
Let's get
Not
into it. Let's go through the episode.
I'm no showrunner, but I think, you know, I'm no, you know, Dan Harmon, but
Yeah, you think you can write a better episode than Dan Harmon, who created the series? Wow. Steven's going to be messaging Dan Harmon on Instagram, be
Hey,
like, well, actually,
Dan.
this episode you made 10 years ago?
I attached this YouTube link to a video essay that I made explaining why it's dog shit. He'd hire me immediately. This kid's
Okay,
got
so let's
butt
get into
guts.
it. One thing that I
Got
do
butts.
really... One thing that I really like about this episode from the start, even if I'm not super on board with how everyone enables Britta's craziness in this episode, I really like Britta in this episode.
I do too. She's Britta at her worst, but that's
But she's still like
Gillian at her
believable.
best.
I still can see why she would go down. A couple of the things later on about like how she messed up specific things are a little too silly. But especially in the beginning of the episode, this pre-party that Britta's thrown together as an excuse to get all of the study group together so she can analyze them, and how lazy last second rush together all of the things at her party are, I think that's pretty inspired. That she's got taco shells and cereal and something red to dip them in, and a rubber spider.
Really good.
Stuff like that, along with the pizza dance last week, I think they're really letting Gillian be especially funny, and they haven't quite gone too overboard with Britta being stupid or hated on for me yet. So I've really enjoyed Britta so far in season 3. Honestly, Britta's probably one of my highlights of season 3 so far.
I think she definitely is for me too.
Yeah, and this continues that.
Has she been my MVP at all this season?
I don't know. Was she your MVP in the Chang storyline?
I don't know
when they
that
were
she
versus
was.
each other. I haven't been writing that stuff down yet. I look into that at the end of the season. It'll be interesting at the end of this season that I think is kind of a scattered one to see where this is going to go. I think season 1 was so obviously Abed. Season 2 was so obviously Troy. I think this one, so far my comment on every episode has been they used all the characters well.
Yeah, for me it's probably between Troy and Britta so far, but it's good. Here's an issue that I have that I don't think is ever discussed.
Okay.
Why do Troy, Abed, and Jeff have costumes on and nobody else does?
They definitely mentioned that Troy and Abed were just dressed like that already. The
Oh.
line, they're like, we were dressed like this when you called us. If we were dressed up, you would know,
They
is
do
what
say
they
that.
say. And
But
Jeff,
why-
I think, is just trying to get some P word at the party, so he put on a he put on a leather jacket.
I don't know. I like when they're in costume because Shirley always has the one she doesn't
I was gonna say,
understand.
my question more so isn't why are they in costume, but why is there not a well
That
thought
was-
out costume for all of them?
That was my question: is why
Yeah.
why aren't they wearing costumes? They're getting ready to go to a Halloween party.
Especially that would have almost been a nice added touch. Is like the party is starting to gather outside of the study room, kind of like the puppy parade, and they all like want to get out there, and we see, you know, Leonard in his Charlie Brown costume or something, and they're like, oh man, that looks awesome, I'd really like to go, and they're all dressed up like something silly, and that would have been
I
a
really
nice
don't
added touch to
understand
the
why
episode.
it's a Halloween episode. Why aren't they in costume?
It also would have been funny if, now that we're just rewriting this episode, it would have been funny if the end tag had taken place at the Halloween party.
Yeah, and everyone's like having a really good time because they're not there.
And
or maybe they do get to go afterwards.
Or maybe someone there is a homicidal maniac and it wasn't any of the study group members.
That would be funny, yeah.
We should write Community.
We should. Let's just start from the beginning. Pilot. Re-pilot. There we go.
So yeah, Britta's having this pre-party. Everyone kind of goes along with it, even though it's a little silly that they would all go along with it. Troy and Abed are cute with their costume.
Mm-hmm. It's a funny
Something
joke
that's
about
really great
Britta's,
here. Did you see the Beetlejuice?
Oh, in the background? Yeah.
Yeah. This is the third time over the course of the 3 seasons that they've said Beetlejuice. He did it once. They did it once in season 1. They've done it once in season 2, and now in this time we actually see Beetlejuice,
which is
because
a nice
it's the
touch.
third time they've seen him. They've said him on the show, and I think that's really nice.
Yeah. That's top tier right there.
Yeah, that's something I really like about this episode is that they think about stuff like that. Annie's looking through.
They didn't think about putting them in costumes though.
Yeah, Annie's Annie's going through Britta's playlist that she's provided, and it's the Beetlejuice soundtrack, NPR podcast, and something else. I don't remember.
The song "Spooky Party."
Yes, and it's just so clearly Britta has put this together very, very last moment. And
The
I like
NPR
that a
joke
lot.
is funny with Britta, where she's like, "Don't worry, they address it."
What do you think about Jeff being a generic Fast and Furiouser in this one?
Here's my issue with it. That's the jacket more akin to the movie Torque, starring Ice Cube, about like a motorcycle or something.
You're making that up, right? That's
No,
not real.
That was real.
No, you
I
made
owned
that
it
up.
on DVD.
The movie Torque,
Torque.
starring Ice Cube.
I think it was Ice Cube, and like they like fight on motorcycles or something,
Yeah.
but they don't really fight. They like fight with the motorcycles, but are they just fighting the motorcycles? It's
Wait,
really-
they like lift up the motorcycles and sword fight with them?
Well, so they ride them, but then one guy's like, I have this motorcycle that has a jet engine in it. I'm going to be the fastest. And like then he like drives it and it goes really fast. I wish I were making this movie up.
So you think it's unfair that Jeff isn't giving credit to where he really got the jacket from?
That is sure as hell Ice Cube. Oh no.
Doesn't like Paul Walker wear a jacket kind of like that in Fast and the Furious?
No? He might, but Brian's a
seen a
cop.
Fast
He
and
wouldn't
the
wear a
Furious
jacket.
movie.
I've seen them all. Oh,
Have
here's
you
a
seen
nice
the newest
shot.
one?
Not yet, no.
I cannot see that.
It's all motorcycles.
Maybe we'll have to
there's
do
Ice
a
Cube.
viewing or a running commentary of Torque for the Patreon.
Yeah, if you any viewers that haven't seen the 2004 film Torque, watch it.
It's really cinema at its finest.
They sure do have motorcycles in that movie.
Yeah.
It's like I was watching some Tim Robinson, I Think You Should Leave.
I haven't watched the new season yet. I'm very excited to.
Well, I was watching before the new season came out a little bit of season 2, and
I mean season 1.
the one where the guy comes, he's like, "Whoa, motorcycle!
Whoa,
baby motorcycle!"
there's a little house inside.
Yeah, that skit's really funny.
That show's really, really funny. I highly recommend the skit where there's like a building and a car crashes into it and it's a hot dog mobile and everyone's trying to like see the guy who did it because the car's empty, and then Tim is in the room in a hot dog costume.
Yeah.
And they're like, wow, who do you guys think did this? Well, we gotta find him. That one's really, really funny too.
Yeah, I thought that the new season, what I watched of it was really funny. There were some pretty good skits.
I'm so excited. I think Tim Robinson is just hilarious.
Yeah.
So Britta takes Jeff to the side and explains that she made everyone anonymously fill out these this like psych evaluation, and she's found out based on it that one of them in the study group set off a lot of red flags for some homicidal tendencies, and that's kind of the crux of the episode, I guess. Mm-hmm. I find more issue that the study group would have sat down to take this test in the first place.
Yeah, I think that it's weird that they're like, Jeff, how could you, like, spoiler alert, how could you randomly fill in, your answers? And I'm like, why didn't all of you? I'm surprised that,
You
Troy
took
didn't
more than
draw
5
a butt.
minutes to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did a joke about that like weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like just a couple weeks ago. The dean's appearance is really funny here. The dean is dressed up as a witch. He's looking great. As we record today, it's Jim Rash's birthday. So
happy
belated
birthday, Jim.
Rash.
Come on the show. Let's talk about it.
Would love to talk about Jim's birthday with them. The dean's appearance is really funny, and all the stuff about the flickering lights and how he says it's Halloween themed, but it's just covering up that their lights don't work was a really funny bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it brings up, the dance is happening nearby, and that the study group is being kept away from the dance, sort of, by doing what's going on here. What do you think of the dean?
I love it. Dean's great in this episode.
Yeah, I love that since Jim Rash is a series regular, that we usually get at least a little bit of Dean every week.
Yeah.
I don't know. You said you think they make it seem too much like Jeff cares and goes along with it throughout this episode with Britta's thing? I didn't quite get that. I didn't.
He
exactly
does
think
eventually. I'll point out the moment where he kind of jumps on board too. I think it's after Annie's story. He starts like being just as gung ho about this, at least seemingly to me, as Britta.
I like when the study group is I like the moment that, so right here, Jeff is a little bit like, oh my God, one of these people is crazy. He probably should have already known that they were all crazy.
Yeah.
And they're intensely watching the group as they're all just dancing and partying. I think that was a sweet moment.
I love Shirley's dance.
They said on the commentary, and this tracks from last week with the Roxanne scene at the end of the episode, that Chevy didn't like to do any dancing on set, and that he would usually find ways to be talked out of having to do it.
Yeah.
And he's doing some real Frank Reynolds dance moves right here.
It's true. He did a tiny
What's
swim.
with old men doing this claw swim
I don't know.
arm dance?
What sort of dancing happened in the 50s?
They were all on cocaine, so everything they did felt awesome.
Ah. This is funny, the first Britta thing where it's like, are people using my name to mean made a small mistake?
Yes, that's a classic. There are a couple of classic bits that start in this episode because Britta it is something that honestly is maybe one of the things that starts the downfall of them over-hating on Britta's character, but this first time it shows up, of course it's really
Love
funny.
the mummy here for Yvette.
The opening theme song is really great, really inspired this week. They did a really good job. And they brought the boobs back for Chevy Chase.
They did.
I don't know if you remember the very first episode of Community has that, and then they took it off. They changed it to whatever it is now because it looked a little too graphic.
Well, so that was before we started watching the episode together through here, so I was only seeing the Hulu version, so the boobs were already gone when I watched it this last time. Mm-hmm.
There's a reference that the dean has gotten free taco meat from the army again this year at the dance because all of their memories were wiped. I forget, was the dean's memory also wiped? I'm sure it was.
Yes.
Man, it's so crazy that episode was real. That it's like
yeah,
in canon,
and I love that it's real.
Turned into zombies and Shirley got pregnant, and
it's great.
So they're all excited to get to the party, but Britta makes everyone sit down to tell scary stories because she wants to tell a scary story, and based on the reactions from the other people, try to figure out who the most crazy one is. And I really liked Britta's rendition of the story, at least, because she's just rushing through it. She doesn't give a shit about the story. She just wants to make other people react to it, so it totally gets the wrong reaction out of everybody.
Yeah. I do really like in this episode how everyone's story reflects their own personality so much with the way they tell it.
Yeah, like how the man on the news on the radio is like, there's a guy with a hook or whatever, and he's doing this or whatever. It's very Britta rushedly telling the story. She also gets to show a little bit of what she thinks about Jeff through this, having Jeff be like, I'm a horny man, I'm only half present, and
I do
and
like
being like, I'm entitled to sex. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about more when we get there, but I think that Annie's story is a very nice real-world parallel, which is funny.
I agree. There's some of that. There's a lot. That's one thing I do like about this episode, that through these stories that are supposed to tell who is crazy, we get a lot more of how each study group member sees the other study group members. And there are things I like about this episode. And honestly, most of it is the representations of the stories that are being told.
Yeah.
Whenever we're in the study group, it's a little bit of a slog, which is sad because usually if you put all the study group members in the study room for the majority of an episode, baby, you got a stew going.
Yeah.
But not so much this time, huh? So there's a hook hand man that murders Jeff. All the murder scenes are done really well. I love Jeff describing how he's getting stabbed as he's getting stabbed. Britta having to yell that she was right, and then she finishes her story in real life, and I like this moment. She's like, okay, and that's how it happened. Abed, how did you feel? And when Abed says embarrassed, and Britta kind of takes that as an indication that maybe he's scary and crazy. I like how the rest of the study group's like, no, that's pretty much right.
That's pretty normal.
Yeah, it was pretty embarrassing. And instead of it probing Abed into like letting some of his psyche out, it becomes more of a competition of who can tell the best scary story. So Abed sets up his.
Well, and I love that the study group is only here because they want to be the one who tells a good story. It's like, well, I can do that better than that. And that just shows how, they all are, I suppose.
Yeah. Abed's story is so perfectly in Abed's character. How Abed's got a director mindset, he knows how to move through the motions of a good story, but it's pretty heartless because he doesn't quite have some of the humanity he needs to give these characters. They all talk like Abed, which is really funny.
Well, and what's so funny about this too is that like if you look at the movies of this genre, the horror movies that do really well right now, they do exactly the stuff that Abed is saying here,
where it
kind
falls
of subverting the
it falls
tropes
into all the tropes, but the movie's like, but we know these are tropes, and the person's not gonna go down in the basement because you always laugh at people for doing that.
Yeah, it's like when they started
do
doing the medicine cabinet scene where they close it and there's nothing there.
Yeah, totally. The only thing is that Abed doing it in his version of the story kind of strips any tension or fear from the story. How do you feel about Abed and Britta kissing each other here? Is it weird to you? Is it weird to watch?
I don't think my eyes register it when it happens.
Yeah, it doesn't feel real, does it? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not real, but it doesn't feel real.
Yeah.
The way Abed after they kiss says enjoyable. Soft lips, just the right amount of moisture. Would you like to do it again? No. We should listen to the news on this radio. It's a very, very good moment. All of Abed's little things through this, like, no, we won't go out and explore. We'll use my fully charged cell phone and stand back to back holding knives. And of course, because it's Abed, when they turn on the news radio to hear about the killer, you can't just turn it on and hear the pertinent news clip. So for the first time in Community, this is something that we hear a lot throughout the next couple seasons. They play Daybreak. This is really catchy little ditty, and Abed and Britta are like, I really love Britta's demeanor too. Gillian, throughout several of these stories, does a really good job of being what the other character wants her to be in the story. They're just both like statues as they tune into this song. And we cut back to the real world and see Abed really humming the whole song and Troy loving every second of it, but it totally strips any tension that the story was building. I love it. It's very Abed. In fact, in some ways, the way they use Abed in this episode might be my favorite that they've used Abed in season 3 so far. He's kind of taken the backbench so far, and he's not exactly like a main character, but the stuff we get from him is a little more pronounced and very Abed.
Yeah.
And everyone gets upset because Abed's story keeps going on and nobody's died. Everyone's like, does anybody die yet? And Abed's like, yes, when it's earned. And
which I like.
But that prompts Annie to tell her story. And story-wise, I definitely like Annie's even better, even if I like the Abed demeanor of Abed's a little bit better, because this gives a lot into Annie's imagination. The way that in her story, the cabin is a lot more Victorian.
Yeah.
She gets to wear this like white flowing kind of like stereotypical like virginal dress, and Jeff is the sexy, handsome, misunderstood vampire man, and he's saved Annie, and they're having a sexually charged encounter, but Annie gets to be the little like fairy princess that she always wants to be. I think it's nice because it really does take us into Annie's psyche a little bit and how she sees Jeff both in good and bad ways.
It does. I think that this one's great. I like the Abed one, which I think hurts this episode because the two strongest stories are the first two that they do, and not counting Britta's.
Oh man, I really like Troy's story.
I think it's fine.
And I kind of like Pierce's.
Yeah.
Just for how ridiculous it is. It's revealed that Jeff is a vampire here, and he's about to suck Annie's blood, but because he's a vampire with emotions, and he knows that it's wrong, so he turns her away. It's very Twilight.
Yeah, it's hilarious. But I am a monster.
And I must feed.
So this is great because he's, got concubine.
He opens up a
Britta.
cupboard and sees, Britta is a concubine. He's clearly feasted on Britta a bunch of times. And almost more cleverly, it gives a look into how Annie feels about Britta, too.
Yeah, I love that Annie's rationale for why Jeff and Britta have been sleeping together is that, well, he wants to sleep with me, but he knows that he can't, so he has to satisfy his urges somewhere.
Maybe the most up line in Community's entire run is stiffen your slackened jaw, you drained and tainted bitch dog.
Oh.
Jeff says to Britta, very clearly showing what Annie thinks of Britta in this story.
Well, and great writing there because it sounds like he said like 6 swear words, but he just said bitch.
Yeah, but it sounds cutting.
Yeah.
And then Britta, I'm fine with this. And Annie tries to flee, and maybe the biggest laugh as a whole thing is Jeff can't help but reach out to her and says, teach me to read. And they were joking around on the commentary how, like, Jeff's this centuries-old vampire, and he's never learned how to read. So then we get a really great montage of Annie in this horror story teaching vampire Jeff to read, and I think Joel nails the moments in this.
It's
first
great.
Trying to sound out each word. He's like, dog hates cats. And then the way it goes so quickly to him, like, pontificatively reading off Shakespeare. Very, very funny. I think Joel sells it incredibly well.
So funny.
And the way that Annie's reaction is more like, not, wow, you should be proud of yourself, but you should be proud of how much I have been able to change.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Jeff is a monster and can't fight his bloodlust, and he goes after Annie. But Annie's just pick up a good book and read. But Annie has a secret. Yeah, she's not just some virgin in white for the vampire to drain. She's a werewolf.
Who feasts on, what is it, desperate vampires. Or what she say?
Yeah. What do you think of the CGI transformation here where her face turns into a werewolf face?
It's okay. At this point, fine with it. They should have stopped there, and then it turns into a full-on horse dog wolf.
Honestly, it could have been a lot worse.
Could have been.
And the way it turns into the wolf face, I don't mind so much. It's more here in a second when it shows it again lunging towards Jeff. It's like the whole head like turns into like a snake neck kind of thing.
Yeah, it does.
And then it cuts to Annie. I do like the moments where we're taken out of the skit of the story and back into the person actually telling the story, where Annie's just really going through this wordy, graphic, bloodshed story. Honestly, she's one of the better storytellers of the group.
I think so. Even Pierce is like horrified.
It's like, what's wrong with this girl? Calls Britta a skanky concubine. So
this is where I think Jeff is worried too that one of them might be a killer.
One of the things I really like is the way that they make it clear that everyone sees themselves as a specific character in the story as we see it, but it's not exactly the way the teller, you know what I mean? Everyone just knows which one Pierce is supposed to be and which one, and that Britta's the drain, the skank. You know, I think it's really funny that, I don't know, there's a lot of cool group dynamic stuff layered into this, even if it is kind of a lighter episode. I also like the moment where Annie's finishing up her story and says, and because he's a vampire, he lived to see every second of it. And Abed kind of nods affirmingly as like, yep, that's how it would happen. That's how the rules go.
Yeah, she really goes in depth with, what vampire Jeff goes through, which shows that maybe she's a little bit, upset at the situation. And also Annie's just a little bit crazy, I think, is also the issue there.
Yeah, and then she smiles and takes a deep breath, and she's like, see, there was a twist. But it does show Jeff and Britta that maybe, yeah, she is a little, she's lost it a little bit. Britta is really trying to point fingers about Annie and being like, well, your story really doesn't have any love or of sparing human life, and Troy's mad that Annie's good at it. So Troy, now it's his turn. He's going to tell a legit scary story. This one is just incredibly silly.
It is.
I really like the casting of Pierce as an old, racist, crazy, mad scientist, and Abed and Troy as these kind of Top Gun looking like fighter pilots that have crashed down.
It's great.
Abed's nearly to death. This is a really interesting. They totally go a different direction with the idea of the scary story. This is almost like sci-fi in this one.
Yeah, it's kind of like sci-fi type stuff, but I like it. It's almost like Human Centipede-esque a little bit, where like there's a crazy doctor doing stuff.
Pierce, the way he says, why don't you come in for first aids and whatnot? That's a very like Troy saying what the mad scientist would say. He gives them these glasses of a mysterious green elixir, and Troy says, so medical, thank you, and they drink it. There's some funny bits there, and it puts them to sleep. They pass out, and it allows crazy Dr. Pierce to do his crazy experiments on them. And Troy and Abed wake up to realize that they've been sewn together.
I think that the performances in this episode from the whole group are just so good. They're
Troy
so
and
believable.
Abed are really
they
good here.
Themselves. Yeah.
The way that they're just instantly so like the idea is that, oh no, now we're Siamese twins and have to be next to each other forever, and they yell everything in unison right away. There's some pretty funny stuff here. The way that it mentally connects Troy and Abed even more.
Yeah.
And how silly the prosthetic of them being connected just
gosh.
a little bit by some stitches that could probably be cut. But no, it connects them mentally. They can taste what the other one is drinking. They can talk to each other through their minds. I really like the Troy in their minds is like, Abed, do we have ESP now? And Abed's like, yep, we're psychic now.
I like how well Troy and Abed like act this conversation without moving their mouths. It's
Absolutely.
awesome.
It is really good. They use their newfound powers to lift up an iron skillet and hit Pierce across the head with it. That would hurt like shit.
Yeah.
And then it's a really funny turn of events when you see them pick up a knife, but it's really just to cut the sandwich that Pierce had made for himself.
Yeah.
So they can each have half. And I don't know why, but the CGI knife cutting the sandwich is really
looked good.
It's really satisfying to me.
It looked way too good.
It looked really good. And the way that the sandwich floats over to them, honestly, it's one of the better special effects, or I don't know how they did it. Maybe they used strings and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But it looks way better than Werewolf Annie.
Yeah, it does.
You tried to destroy us, but you only made us more awesome. That's me whenever anyone gives our podcast a bad review.
Yeah. If someone gives our podcast a bad review, I will fight them.
I've been saying it since the beginning.
With chess.
I've been waiting for someone to write us a review, turning our podcast name around on us.
Yeah.
Be like, well, for You Can't Disappoint a Podcast, they sure did disappoint me. I would honestly love that.
Yeah, that'd be great. It'd be great press. We could make it our like new cover photo.
I would do that.
Yeah.
So Troy and Abed overpower Pierce, and then he goes to sleep and wakes up to find that they've sewed a butt onto his chest. They've taken his butt off and sewed it to his chest. A terrible papier-mâché-ass looking prosthetic butt.
I love that, like, now Troy and Abed, because they're joined at the waist through some stitches, they can now perform
do the same
surgeries.
Type of surgery.
Yeah.
I mean,
but
crazy
much more
old man,
complicated than what
Pierce
he could
professor
do.
Can do it.
He literally just sewed them together, but they did an entire like transplant of his butt to his chest.
And the fact that the show didn't stop at the butt, that he's upset by it, but then realizes it's like having boobs he can touch all day.
I bet what happened is they put the butt there, and then they were like, "Huh, that was kind of like boobs," and then then they're like, "Well,
what?" And my favorite part of this, the reveal that his hands are where his feet were, and they just wiggle the fingers. And then the sewed-on feet look pretty funny, too. And the way he just tries to paw at the boobs with his feet hands.
So funny.
Jeez, it's weird. It's very Troy. And then Troy, in real life, trying to mimic having feet hands, touching a butt, boobs, and being disgusted by it. Yeah, it's a good
Abed's
moment.
like, yeah.
Abed really likes it. Man, I love how just wholesome and just egging each other on and like being a hype man to the friend Troy and Abed are.
They're so great.
And this kind of reveals, Pierce says, keep me out of your stupid stories. And Troy's like, I never said it was you. And you realize that in all of these stories, they never said who each person is supposed to be. It's just very clear. I thought a couple of the racist Pierce jokes went a little too far in this episode. Pierce literally calls himself a racist here. I don't know. I always thought that it was more that, and Pierce doesn't know.
No, he's racist. But he says here, I'm your crazy old racist friend. Mm-hmm.
What's worse? Being a racist and not realizing it, or being a racist and knowing it and doubling down on it? Is it
Being
that?
a
'Cause
racist
I feel
and
like
knowing
it's that.
it. Yeah, it's definitely that.
They're both really bad. I feel like there's some really bad things in not knowing what you're saying has the connotations that it does, but I feel like everybody does that to a degree sometimes. It's way worse to be like, I sure do hate minorities.
Yeah.
And please nobody take that audio clip and use it against me.
I already have. Local podcaster today gets canceled after audio clip of him saying he hates minority services.
Now we get Pierce's story, and it's even less of a horror story.
Yeah.
I love the way it's set up with Pierce with this flowing hair, his cup of brandy, and the women dressed sexily, like waiting for Magnum to come join the three of them back in bed. The girls do a really good job of playing it up. It's really funny. And then it's what happens here is that Troy and Abed are very ethnically tinged thugs that come break into Pierce's mansion and hold him up at gunpoint. It's a lot funnier to think that this is how Pierce sees Troy and Abed, who are nothing like this, more than it is actually fun to watch Troy and Abed act this out. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it makes sense that Abed, especially, like, obviously Pierce has stereotypical thoughts about black people, so all that he needs to think of Troy this way is to see that he's black. But Abed is, like, so nothing like this either, and the fact that Pierce just also groups him in with that other stereotype, I don't know, it's funny and it's bad in a Pierce way that I like. I just don't really like seeing Donald Glover and Abed have to act this way very much.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this one. This is normally where I check out for
I don't blame you.
Episode.
But it does give us the beautiful joke of Troy beating them up, or of Pierce beating them up with his dick in a minute.
Yeah.
I feel like it's good for that. Pierce gets a true action moment where he, like, real gingerly takes the guns out of their hands and then punches them each across the face. He punches Troy a bunch of times, forcing Troy to say that he's still relevant during it. And then Pierce unzips the fly of his bathrobe, appearingly. And Troy goes, "Oh my God." And then Pierce, like, I Dream of Jeannie nods, and the dick hits Troy in the face, apparently.
Outrageous.
And then he goes for his birthday spanking and asks which of the girls know how to count to 30. That's definitely the shortest story, and it's definitely the worst one. But it's so shocking that it can make me laugh a little bit. But you just don't like it at all, do you?
Not a big fan. I think the which one of you girls can count to 30 joke is the funniest part.
Birthday spankings.
Birthday spankings.
Pierce is really proud of himself. And
you owe me some birthday spankings.
Oh, okay. Well, luckily, when we're sharing those bunk beds in our party mansion,
there will be lots of time for spanking.
Yeah. More than just birthday spanking. Some of them will just be for sport.
Oh, good.
At the end of Pierce's story, they all look really put off by it, but I don't think there's much of an issue. Nobody really thinks that Pierce is going to be the murderer. It's just, oh, wow, that was some really unhinged Pierce commentary on himself and us. Troy's line that Pierce's wasn't even a ghost story. It's like an episode of some show that we're both too young to remember. And Pierce makes it kind of doubles down on the, what, I didn't say who it was, but then there's like, yes, of course, Magnum was me, and you guys were the thing. I did not like Pierce's still am Pakistan line.
No.
I did not like that at all. I feel like Pierce's racism towards Abed should stop at calling him Abed. I think that's funny that he always calls him Abed, but maybe it makes me cringe a little bit more knowing that Dan Harmon was the man behind the typewriter for this one.
Yeah.
And that they kind of double down on some of those jokes in this episode.
True.
Not my favorite.
No.
Annie and Shirley are starting to get weirded out by the stories, and Shirley opines for the times when ghost stories were about good versus evil. And you say you tap out at the Pierce
I like
line,
Shirley's.
but Shirley's is one of the highlights of the whole episode, and here it's in the last third of the episode.
Yeah.
There's so many, like, this whole story is memes. Everything about it, from them like being old and party clothes and partying.
Yeah.
Jeff's, oh man, my drugs are wearing off. to
Best
Britta
line
taking
of this whole skit.
Well, first, the way that she takes a shaker that's labeled weed that's full of, like, ground oregano or something, throws it all over her body so Jeff can do it off of her, like, body shots, to which Jeff responds, "That is my kind of pot bomb."
So funny.
A really, really great moment. But they don't get to enjoy Jeff's favorite kind of pot bong because the rapture occurs. Not
Yo,
Jeff, I guess Django.
Check it out.
There's all kinds of biblical plagues going on outside. And it's also a really funny bit here when Britta says, "I don't care, I lived in New York." And what's funny for me is that she walks out, closes the door, comes back in covered in blood, but completely unfazed, and just stands there like she's like a Sims character or something.
Yeah.
Gillian Jacobs does some really good stuff of, like, she's not playing Britta, she's playing like an avatar for these stories.
Totally.
Like, she does it in the Abed one, she does it here. I think there's some really good inspired comedy acting from Gillian here.
Definitely.
And then, like, also like avatars, the gang screams in the most, like, unattached way possible.
Yeah.
And
Troy's
Britta,
great
ugh,
there.
it's like New York out there. Then the funny bits build even more. The news on the radio comes on to announce that all of the Christians have been raptured and the world is over, but everyone who's left is the coolest people on the earth. And then at the end, this is NPR. I thought that was really funny. The NPR is still around.
Yeah.
They're all pretty upset that it's the end of the world, but kind of like toe half in upset about it. But they're really scared when the dean shows up as the devil with a hearty hello. And if the dean was in this episode more, his turn of the devil would earn him an MVP.
Absolutely.
So positively. Because just like the jokes that Dan writes in the Pierce storyline are a little bit too far, a lot of the jokes with the dean as the devil could go too far, but because Jim Rash is just, man, such a talented comedic performer. And also, it's so funny that this is not far before or after the time that Jim Rash won a Oscar.
Yeah.
And
Insane.
here he is as the devil. Hello. So many funny things about his lines here, from damnation orientation is a really funny one, the sketch of it being neck deep in scorpions, lava enemas, then Pilates, which everyone's like, yeah, I like Pilates, but Pilates is a demon that eats your genitals. But first, stabby, and he starts going off after them. But thankfully, in appearances, it seems that the day is saved by Angel Shirley, who's really just come down to blow the devil away, sure, but gloat to all of her friends that she's made it to Abraham's bosom and that she forgives them. This has got to be, people can say what they want about Shirley's contributions to the series, but she has some really wonderful moments through season 3. I can think of some that are still coming up in episodes ahead, and this is one of my favorite Shirley moments so far. It's got to be. I think it's
great.
The way that she delivers her angelic speech and the "I forgive you." Everything about this storyline is really, really funny. The way the study group commit to being Shirley's version of the study group.
Yeah.
It's really funny. Jeff's prayer hands when they're asking to go to heaven makes me laugh pretty hard. This has got to be definitely the highlight of the episode for me.
Really?
I think
Nice.
so.
I think it's really funny.
You don't think it's the highlight?
No.
What's the highlight? How can gay marriage? How can that not be part of the highlight?
Yeah,
this
that's
whole
fair.
storyline, I feel like you could take this 3 minutes of the episode as a clip, tell someone there's an episode of Community where they all tell their versions of scary stories. This is Shirley's, and you've seen the part that you really need to see of the episode for mine.
That's true.
This would be a funnier little
I get
viral video than it is as a 22-minute episode of television.
It would be.
And the way the dean commits to it, Britta covered in blood, and the way that they all act like non-player characters throughout all of this.
Yeah.
I really like it a lot. And then it cuts to Shirley really passionately. They chainsaw the bits forever, she says. And then Pierce wrote himself as Jeff in the story because you don't even notice that Pierce wasn't in that story at all. He says, well, where was Jeff in that story? And why was my name Django? Okay, Pierce. Whatever you say.
Right.
Then we get a commercial, and afterwards, Shirley is being chastised for her story, that it wasn't a horror story, it was a sermon. We get the spoiling a Brita party is like letting poop spoil line. You like that one?
I do. Think that one's funny.
Everyone starts to get up and go, and Britta really doesn't want everyone to leave until they figure it out.
And see,
You're
Jeff
right
goes
here
and blocks
that Jeff
them
is
too.
like standing ahead. It would make more sense that he just stay with the group. They could have
Yeah.
it would have worked better if this was just Britta's thing.
Definitely.
And it was perfectly set up to be just Britta's thing.
Yep.
It's good to let Jeff be the other person who like knows what's actually going on, but he can be like naysaying it the whole time.
Yeah. Literally. I think that he agrees way too much, especially agreeing way too much like visibly. It's one thing if that was like in his head, he was like, well, maybe I'll help out. But
Or if you just saw his reactions to the stories, it's stuff like this where he stands up in front of everyone and won't let them leave. He should be one that wants to leave just as bad as everyone
Totally.
else. Another thing that I don't love about this and makes it so clear that all they wanted to do was to do these silly horror movie stories is now there's 4 or 5 minutes left in the episode and how quickly they rush into like the last segment of the episode.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
There's
They
like no
zoom through
real
it.
tension about the people being annoyed and wanting to leave. They're just like, all right, we've all told our stories. We're going to stand up and leave now. And then Britta says no and explains to everyone what's going on. For an episode written by Dan Harmon, I feel like the structuring of this episode is a little lazy, even if it does have some really strong jokes scattered throughout it. Which makes me feel like Dan Harmon certainly, he has the Dan Harmon story circle, the way a story is told over a sitcom length of time, the way it involves each of its characters is revolutionary. But maybe Dan Harmon is better at the front of a writer's room and not as the one who's left to take home the assignment.
Yeah.
Is that bad of me to say?
I don't disagree. I think we've seen it other places where this sort of thing can happen.
Sure. Now, obviously, Dan is the most important person to the show because we're getting close to seeing what it's like when he's gone, and it's not pretty. But I don't think he needs to be writing the episodes. I think he can trust the staff that he works with closely to take his revolutionary ideas and add a lot of funny lines and character-driven stuff to it. But anyway, yeah, Britta just basically explains everything that's going on and how they need to figure out who is the crazy one. I don't know. There's just no stakes to this, and they're supposed to be, and it makes it feel silly. I do like the little montage we see of, like, Britta's fears that they're all going to be murdered, so we get a little shot of each of them getting murdered by a hooded figure that could be any one of them. Troy and Abed get axed in the back. Britta and Annie and Shirley doing their makeup get stabbed by surprise. And it's like the softest stab ever.
I know.
Did you see that? It's like...
It's like when Jeff's getting attacked by the hook, like he was just kind of poking him with it.
Britta's perspective of Jeff and Pierce cheersing martinis with each other, and then they get poisoned. I don't know. This is funny, and especially the visual gag that Britta pictures herself as this smart bookie person reading a big book, but she doesn't know that it's War and Peace, so it's titled War and Peace. She doesn't know if that's the author, if that's the title.
Not at all.
That's a pretty funny bit. Mm-hmm. And she gets choked to death, and the study group take a step back from her and maybe think that Britta has been the crazy one all this time because she's the one that has these clear images of murdering each of the study group members. So when they see it as her, we see a little cut of her killing herself and then being unmasked as herself. I think that's a cool little really shot too. One thing I do want to point out about this episode that we haven't talked about yet that they pointed out in the commentary that I thought was cool was in the season 2 episode Epidemiology, soundtracking it to ABBA came a little bit later in production. So Ludwig had done a bunch of Halloween horror zombie music for it that wasn't used because they went with the ABBA bit, which was inspired and was a great bit to include. So some of the music, some of the scary music used in this episode was Ludwig's compositions from the previous season's Halloween episode. So it's good that they got to use some of it.
That's super cool.
And bits like the killing montages and Britta unmasking herself, those are some of the sort of inspired bits in this episode.
Yeah.
And Britta starts to see herself as maybe she is the crazy one. But we're getting very close to letting this fizzle out the way that it does. They're getting freaked out because it's Halloween. Annie calms everyone down. This is a little bit of a funny bit before it gets real messy. The lights go out, and when they come up, everyone has a really specific weapon to defend themselves from the others. Troy had the time to make Wolverine claws with pencils. Shirley's smashing a bottle. I think my favorite one is Pierce with the fire hydrant, and you can hear him say, "You don't want to be barium sulfated."
I like that
that's
he
a
ran
really
all
funny
the
bit.
way to the wall to grab the fire extinguisher and made it back to that exact spot, all without like being able to see, which is fantastic.
Yeah. And then Jeff tries to do a winger speech to pull it all together, and it fizzles out pretty well, but we get Jeff's version of the horror story. I've been thinking a lot, like, why didn't Jeff tell one? He got out of it. Yeah. But in his story, they're all cheersing over Coco. A hooked murderer comes in to kill them, but it's Chang who they bring in with a hug and with love because they're a loving study group. And it's a pretty bad story told by Jeff, but it's nice to have a tiny little Chang moment in here.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ken sells the 2 seconds he gets of this episode. I kill because I'm afraid.
I think it could have been, since we're, writing, I think it could have been a little bit funnier if Jeff didn't include Chang in the story, but Chang had, like, come in the room and been like, and it was me under the mask.
And I killed all of you. And he's the crazy one. Yeah, since we're writing the episode throughout
I think
this.
that would have been funny.
But they have a group hug, love hugs.
And
everyone
like,
puts their weapon down, but Pierce, this line's too far, but I'll allow this one. That's the gayest crap I've heard in my life. Funny. I don't know. It's just the conflict in this episode. They should have done a lot more with Britta's anxieties in this episode because putting the basis of it behind the study group, it's clear that they don't care. It's clear that there's nothing real behind what they're all stressed out about. It wants so hard to be one of those episodes where they're all locked in a room together and they build off of each other's, I don't know, their anxieties, and it just kind of misses the mark. Even though there's some really, really good stuff throughout it, it really kind of misses the mark when they try to have any type of emotional backbone to this with the characters. I would have liked it better if it was just a straight laugh episode.
I do too. I think I would have liked that a lot more. I don't know. They did a lot of things really well in this episode, but overall it just doesn't land as well as a lot of community episodes do for me.
It's one of the shallowest, kind of emptiest episodes of the series so far. I think what really misses the mark is it's really, really funny, but Community is always really, really funny, and there's usually a statement behind what they're making fun of, and there just isn't here. And the one that they've come up with feels like they did it just because they had to, not because that idea came before all the silly jokes.
Well, and the thing is, they just did an episode where they told 7 different stories really well.
Yes.
But they were all connected really well, and outside of the stories, it was fantastic.
They tell 6 stories, and 3 of them are funny, and the narrative thread that holds it together is like a 5 out of 10.
Totally.
I think this episode's higher than a 5 out of 10, but yeah, it does not hold up well, and it does not do the episode any favors, being the week after Remedial Chaos Theory.
This is a solid 6.5 for me.
If it had been the 3, 4, 5 that was supposed to be, and if Remedial Chaos had been 3, and then what was the one after that?
It was Competitive Ecology.
Yeah, Competitive Ecology, which I actually really liked that episode. If this one had come after Competitive Ecology, maybe I would have felt a little better about it. It's just kind of a mess, and it kind of swings and a misses.
Yeah.
And the ending swings and a misses, too, because, of course, the thing was that Britta got the test results wrong all along. She ran the Scantron through backwards, so they're probably not all crazy. It's a cheap way to write themselves out of this. However, the bit that ends it where they find out that they're all crazy except for one of them, and that one person is Abed, and they all decide to not figure out who it is, so they can all have the fleeting notion that they might be sane.
The fact that the results don't matter anyway, because Jeff filled his out randomly, so it means nothing what Jeff says. I'm sure his would have ranked that way anyway, but he filled it out randomly.
It doesn't fix anything, but the little bit that they put it on, I don't hate.
Yeah.
I do like that, of course, Abed is the sane one, and of course the rest of them are crazy.
And I like that Abed's the sane one, but Pierce's, when they show them, has almost everything checked as a red flag, and I think it would have been funnier if that were Shirley or Annie.
Also, it felt like a sitcom lower than Community, the way that they all walk out of the room being like, don't Britta this. Oh, now you're piercing it. Oh, don't be a Shirley. That was a little silly.
Yeah, I didn't
And
like that.
not I love silly, but this was like, oh, that choice you made was a little silly. I don't love that.
Shirley, don't pierce. I don't get it.
Yeah. And that's the end of the episode. We pan over the test results. We see, that Pierce is the craziest. Shirley is probably the next craziest. And then Britta and Annie. But Abed is sane. And
Troy wasn't too far off.
End of the episode. And then the end tag, which I like, I guess. It goes back to one of the stories instead of doing something different. I wish it would have done something different, but instead we get a little bit more of Pierce with feet, hands, and one last bit, which, because they play it off really well, of Troy and Abed talking to each other without saying anything. And, of course, they can't resist but do a Troy and Abed something. But I like Abed scratching Troy's chin, Troy feeding him bourbon or whatever, and I don't know, it's...
My favorite part of it is that Pierce is over there freaking out because he's left out, but they're not speaking at all, so he feels especially left out. I think that part's funny.
And that's the end of the episode, and we've only been recording for like an hour and 15 minutes.
Oh, shit.
This is an episode that I enjoy, and I'll laugh really hard whenever I put it on, but this is the type of episode that I could see someone in our lives watching and not understanding why we do this show, analyzing it.
Totally.
You know what I mean? If every episode of Community was like this, there wouldn't be a lot to say about it. And often there's so much to say about it. And
last week there was so much to say about an episode we totally agreed upon, you know?
Yeah, and it definitely doesn't say a lot for this episode that we got through it pretty fast. Now, I think it's a fairly fun episode.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Let's talk for a second. How do you think you'd rank the 5 episodes of the season that we've had so far? Biology 101 is a mess.
Yeah.
The Jeff going crazy, leaving the study group, having the 2001 Space Odyssey dream. That episode's a mess. Geography of global conflict. I love the model UN. I love Crisis Alert. The Jeff and Annie stuff was pretty bad in that one for mine. Episode 3, I like competitive ecology quite a bit.
Yeah.
Episode 4, Remedial Chaos Theory is one of the best episodes of television of all time. And episode 5, Horror Fiction and 7 Spooky Steps. I think my bottom has got to be Geography of Global Conflict.
Really?
My number 4 would have to be Biology 101. My number 3 would have to be this one, Horror Fiction and 7 Spooky Steps, just because of all of the iconic laughs in it. My number 2 would be, of course, then Competitive Ecology. Number 1, Remedial Chaos Theory. What about for you?
Mine would go a little differently. I would go Biology as my lowest. Then I would go Geography.
Okay.
Even though I like the Modelin thing so much.
See, I like a lot of things about that episode, but there have been a lot more episodes this season that have a lot of things going for them, but they don't just come together in the way they usually do.
I wish I could put Global Geography above this one, but I just can't with the Jeff and Annie stuff.
Yeah, Annie's tantrum that she throws in that one takes that down so far from me.
Yeah. Then I would go with this one, then Competitive Ecology, then Remedial Chaos Theory is the top.
So we're pretty close to each other, just two swapped. And let's wrap up this episode. I will still give it the compliment that I think this episode uses everyone in the study group pretty well.
Yeah.
So that being said, who's your MP3? I'm kind of
my MP3.
Who's your MVP? Because I'm kind of going between two.
Oh, well, I don't have anyone yet. I haven't made a final decision. Yeah, and I was hoping that you could sway me in one direction or the other.
Okay, I'm going to give an honorable mention to Abed. Mainly because I love how much his story is in his voice. But my MP3 this week, it's got to be Britta.
Yeah.
I don't love the Britta conflict that's the real world of this episode, but I do believe that Britta would see something like that, worry about it a lot, and it all up in the process. And I like the way that she's like an avatar in everyone else's stories. I really like her in her own story in the beginning with Jeff. I really like her in Shirley's story and in Abed's story. I think I'll give it to Britta.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Britta too. I think that her performance in all the other stories was fantastic. I was between her and Shirley because I thought that Shirley did a great job in all the stories as well, but I think Britta stood out a little bit more to me in some of them.
Yeah.
And Gillian did a great job the whole episode of portraying what she was meant to portray. So I think MVP goes to Britta this week in an episode that was not my favorite, but it wasn't bad by any means.
Gillian certainly shines in it.
Yeah,
it isn't bad by any means, but it's like it's a really good episode of just about any other sitcom.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we were watching just about like if like something like How I Met Your Mother did an episode like this, and the emotional resonance was exactly as it is in this one, in that show it'd be like, oh wow, they like went a little farther than normal.
Mm-hmm.
But in this one, when Community goes so hard so often, it can't help but feel half-baked.
Yeah, I think that we were really spoiled with season 2, and that's why we're seeing the flaws in season 3 right now, because we're going right through, you know.
And I'm really hopeful going into all the episodes, especially this one. I was like, yeah,
I know.
love this
I was
episode.
hoping my mind would change. I was like, oh, I'm going to watch this, and it won't be like right after Etymology, so I think I'm going to really like it, and I did not.
And unlike you, I do think every time I watched it this time, I liked it a little bit better, but it was because I didn't care what was going on and I just laughed at the jokes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think much like Steven's performance earlier in today's podcast, I think it's probably a B-, maybe even borderline C+.
I would not give this episode a B. It hangs out in the C range for me.
So yeah, Steven, we've done it. That's a wrap on one of, if not the shortest podcast, and You Can't Disappoint a Podcast.
I think it really might be. That's crazy.
A full hour shorter than when we did Messianic Myths with your mother.
Wild.
It was fun. I've honestly, going through season 3 and not outright loving every single episode,
it's been fun.
It's kind of revitalized my love of doing this podcast with you, because I feel like we've had a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, we have. It's been a lot less like agreeing and just like, you know, praising everything. I think this season we're getting
that thought very
to be
strongly.
the shrewd assholes that we are at times, and we get to
We've
really
been that for a while. I don't think.
I think season 1 after the Smitty episode is when I put on my hard ass hat, and I was like, this is not comedy. Comedy was 3 guys bopping each other. Yeah. You know what I mean.
Well, let's wrap this up. Let's finish things up. Next week we'll be back as always to talk about Advanced Gay, an episode that I both don't remember very well and have really low expectations for.
I think that I'm not going to find it as funny as I used to, I'm sure.
I will say it's noteworthy. I believe this is the episode that introduces us actually physically meeting Pierce's father.
It is that episode.
So maybe there will be some good Pierce stuff. I've been beginning to feel how Chevy is not invested at all in being in this show anymore. So you know what? Bring on a Pierce episode. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I think I've watched this episode more recently than a lot of others for some reason. I think when I was home one time, my brother and sister were just watching through.
And this was the one that was on.
Mm-hmm.
I'll always remember, I got my pocket full of hawthorns, my pocket full of hawthorns. So we'll get into that next week. Send us in your trivia, your episode MP3, and your favorite funny moment for next week's show to can'tdisappointpodcast@gmail.com. If you like the things that we do here and you want to support us further, support us on Patreon at patreon.com/can'tdisappointpodcast. Every week before we record the show, we do the live You Can't Dis a Pre-show, and it's always really fun, and you can play games with us, and we talk really off the cuff, and sometimes maybe even laugh harder than we do over here, so I definitely recommend you coming and hanging out with us there, on top of other side podcasts we got going on, and I don't know, Steven and I are going on a trip soon. I think we're going to do some travel diary type content over on the Patreon. I think that'll be fun. And it means a lot for us that you support us and help us take this thing further. So come check us out if you got a couple pennies to spare. And Steven, where can the people find us to hang out with us for free outside of the podcast?
If they want to track us down and really hunt for us, do a little chase through the outback to get a hold of us, you can go see us on Twitter over at You Can't Disapod. We're also on Instagram at Can't Disappoint Podcast, and we're on Facebook and the YouTube under the name You Can't Disappoint a Podcast. All sorts of fun things happening over there. Send us a DM, send us a tweet, send us a meme. Give us a follow, give us a handshake, give us a kiss on the forehead when we're napping. Any of those things are acceptable if you make your way to us over at any of those platforms.
So true. So true. From inside the Dreamatorium, Black Lives Matter, get vaccinated. I'm Zach.
I'm Steven.
And we love you.
And you're
See you
very
next
special.
week. If you're a good boy, we'll give you a little treat next week.
Do you want a treat?
All right, bye.